London is full of hundreds and hundreds of theatres, both small and large-scale theatres. There is so much theatre being made over here, both classics from all around the world and modern contemporary plays. There's festivals of Latin American theatre, French theatre, and plays brought from all around the world. The West End is the sort of centre of some of the biggest shows out there, both musicals and plays with some of the most fantastic actors coming over from all over the world to perform here. It's an exciting place to come and see theatre. And see some of the best theatre that the world can offer.
Now let's turn to As You Like It, which deals precisely with this issue of the relation between the political order and the natural order, because it's a play about the relation between the court and the country, the countryside. This is a genre called pastoral. And once again, Shakespeare works within a literary genre and criticizes it and adapts it to his purposes. Now, pastoral poetry goes all the way back to the ancient Greeks, Theocritus and his idols. It appears in Latin poetry. Virgil's a famous example. In general, this is poetry set in the farmland, usually among shepherds, but sometimes among goat herds. But the typical pastoral poem involves a bunch of shepherds out in the countryside. They're living the simple, easy life. They are innocent and morally virtuous. There's usually a wise old shepherd spouting sententious maxims about how good country life is. He's often named Corin, as in As You Like It. There's a sense that love is innocent and uncorrupt. It's rather interesting that pastoral poetry tends to develop in very corrupt societies, like late Republican Rome and above all the early era of the Empire in Rome. In countries that have decadent courts, in fantasy is to retire to rural life. Some of you may know that Marie Antoinette had a country village built at Versailles. I don't want to, say nasty things about Queen Elizabeth, but her court had a lot of corruption, a lot of infighting, a lot of backstabbing, a lot of bribery, a lot of political machination. So Shakespeare was very aware of this literary form, and you can see he has it in mind here in As You Like It, because he is using the characters who are shepherds and getting the characters out into the countryside. I think he's deeply skeptical of the form because he finds it simplistic. It sets up an overly simplified contrast between the decadence of the court and the healthy innocence of the countryside. I think Shakespeare wants to challenge that. Nevertheless, he does begin with the sense that the court is corrupt, and that's really central to this play.
It's a play about learning to love, learning about, I think Rosalind goes on a journey of, Rosalind's the character that I play, goes on a journey of self-discovery. She's learning to be in the world, learning about herself and how to live and love best. And I think the play itself is a sort of metaphysical exploration of different kinds of love, romantic love, friendship, love that's based on lust, love that's based on appreciation of mutual intellect, perhaps between Jake Grease and the Duke in the forest. I think you see lots of forms of love, and hopefully people in the audience see their own relationships reflected in this, and it encourages them to ask themselves the question of how could I love better? Or, does that remind me of a relationship I'm in, and how could I be better? So it's a play about freedom, I think, as well. Once you get into Arden, it's like a liminal space where you can be whoever you want to be and explore yourself, both to good and bad ends. I don't think Rosalind behaves well at times. She but she really really pushes the boundaries in the forest and explores the limits of her brain capacity, of her physicality, before, I think, sort of coming back to her centre and knowing who she wants to be. It's a play about growth, I think, for lots of the characters.
Do you know what? That's so difficult because there's so many different stories that are involved in the play. But I guess the main storyline, or sort of the central storyline, is boy meets girl, boy falls in love with girl, girl falls in love with boy, and then they both get banished or they leave to the forest for some reason. And girl decides to disguise herself as a boy, and they meet again, but boy doesn't recognize girl as boy. And then she teaches him about love while disguised as this boy. Teaches him that love is something different than what he thinks it is. And then she reveals herself at the end and they get married. That's the simplest way that I could go and then describe it. But it's done in a really, really fun way, and tied into their love story are so many different twists and turns and other people's relationships as well.
I think, well, love is an eternal subject, which we're all trying. It seems to be ever elusive to us about, you know, how do we love and live together better? I think that these are eternal subjects. I mean, that's what makes Shakespeare so fascinating, is how can this man be writing in 1590 something for As You Like It, 1604 for Measure, and have these eternal themes which resonate with us today.
It's funny, I think when we first did As You Like It, I needed the audience. There's some people that say As You Like It is their favourite Shakespeare play. I like it more now than I did, but I found it hard to know in rehearsals. I got really lost with it. It was only until those audience members that knew it and loved it came to see it at Stratford-upon-Avon, and then I could sort of hear what they were looking for, that I felt, okay, right, I see what this is more. It's a kind of weird bag of different. There's a tradition of theatre in this country called music hall. I mean, I guess it's. I mean, I don't know how it translates into Spanish or Portuguese, but and I feel like this is a little bit, As You Like It's a bit like that. It's a series of. It looks like there's a plot happening again with Dukes being exiled, and then of course Rosalind and Celia get exiled and they run off with Touchstone the clown to the Forest of Arden, and it feels like the Forest of Arden then becomes this, it starts off as maybe a scary place to go to. When they arrive, it turns out that the shepherds are all deeply in love with each other, and you know the old Duke is having, you know, it's cold and it's frosty there, but everyone's hearts are warm, and there's a sort of tenderness, and I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's like the San Francisco in the 60s or something, and then the plot sort of stops, and everyone just sort of falls in love and chases after each other and read poetry and think about stuff and dances about dead deers, and it's a really weird play. It kind of just. It's like everyone's popped a pill and are just sitting back, just sort of like in the woods. So yeah, and then it ends, and there's a sort of bit of plot back at the end again, and everyone's happy. You know, the old nasty Duke's now nice, and it's just Jaques goes off to sort of like be he's still a bit miserable, but other than that, everyone's kind of chilled out and happy, and it ends with a dance.
So I've decided not to set As You Like It in any specific period or place. I feel like there's so much theatricality to the play, and indeed we have the speech, all the world's a stage. And so I decided to set it in the world of the theatre. Really what we're doing with As You Like It is exposing and celebrating and declaring in a very honest way that we're here making theatre, that we're on a stage in front of an audience telling a story, and let's not hide any of the mechanics of how we do that. So one of the ways in which we're manifesting the world of the theatre on stage is through costume. So it's going to feel like, when we get into the Forest of Arden, that the characters have been let loose in the RSC wardrobe department. And so it's going to be a real mingle-mangle of periods, styles, genres, and also the audience will experience different styles of performance. There will be a bit of panto in the production, there will be some stand-up comedy, there will be some improvisation, there will be songs. There are lots of songs in As You Like It, but lots of different styles of song. There will be dance, there will be clowning, there will be some physical theatre. I think the audience are going to have an experience of the theatre that really values their presence in the room. For them to be able to turn around to the person sitting next to them, no matter how different that person might seem to them, and to not be able to stop themselves from laughing with them, crying with them, talking with them, dancing with them, singing with them. It should be a communal act of coming together, I hope.
Yeah, I think it was starting well where Orlando, well I play Orlando, and where Orlando starts off in the play is that his father's died and his brother hasn't given him the right education that he promised to, their dad that he would. And so he treats him like a sort of slave. He has to go and work and go with the servants, and he feels like he deserves a lot more. It was hard in rehearsals to sort of go and put myself in a position where he really didn't want to live anymore, and he needed something else. He needed some form of excitement. He needed to take control of his own life, and that was hard to put myself in that position, because it could be very, very draining. I mean, ultimately he goes and finds love and he finds his own happiness, but where he starts in the play is quite a dark place for him.
David finds it impossible to lie. He just can't. It deeply pains him to be untruthful. And that feels very important for Orlando, because perhaps sometimes Orlando is overlooked as a character in As You Like It. And David's not going to let that happen. He's an absolute pleasure to work with. He's infectious, his joy, the depth of his feeling of pain. David also is remarkably modern and is in touch with a young audience. He knows how to make them tick. He knows how to reach them. He knows how to be relevant and completely and utterly truthful at the same time. Lucy Phelps is playing the role of Rosalind, and my experience of Lucy has always been an artist who is never satisfied and who is constantly searching, constantly digging away, and has tremendous instincts for humanity and brings a very fierce intelligence to the role, an enormous amount of empathy. Lucy feels everything on her skin, and somebody who's willing to feel and share their feelings so generously is extremely lovable. And above all, the audience must love Rosalind, and I love Lucy Phelps. Lucy Phelps also challenges me, and she will challenge the audience, and she'll challenge the world.
Touchstone, he's a fool. I mean, he's that's what he's called. I think I don't even know if he's called Touchstone in the cast list. He's called the Fool, but he's named Touchstone. So some people think he's maybe only called Touchstone when he gets to the forest, like Celia and Rosalind take on new names. I don't really have an opinion on that. I think he's. My feeling with Touchstone, as with a lot of the clowns in Shakespeare, is I kind of keep on thinking back to the original performances and the original clowns in the theatre company. There was Will Kemp, and then later on there was a guy called Robert Armin. And I feel like Touchstone is a sort of a combination of the two. I wonder whether actually one of them, whether what we've got in the text is the first run in it being Will Kemp, and then the second run being Robert Armin, and because the kind of clever jester was very much the later clown Robert Armin, but the kind of the more straightforward clowning is much more Will Kemp, who was actually the bigger ego and the bigger. I mean, he was the wealthier man in the company when Shakespeare was writing, and then he left. And I always think that there's a scene where Touchstone absolutely rips a character called William that just happens to walk on stage right at the end of the play, and Touchstone lays into him something chronic with language. And I always think it must have been William Shakespeare and that everyone knew that there was a sort of tension between them, and it was a sort of meta theatrical moment at the end of the play where everyone got to watch Will Kemp just absolutely tear into William Shakespeare, so that was my kind of thinking on it. On it was how do you do a clown now? And I don't know, looked at different I looked a lot at Stuart Lee. He's got great books about comedy and clowning, and there's a great book by Howard Jacobson about Seriously Funny, which is again taking comedy all the way back to I guess kind of early rites of trying to make the earth bring forth goodness. You'd have like clowns literally having sex with holes in the ground, and of course that became a kind of like a clowning thing, or like satires and all that sort of stuff. And my sense was maybe that in the court you've got a kind of more contemporary urban stand-up, and I kind of went for a kind of Noel Fielding-esque character. And then when he gets to the forest, he just gradually reverts to a kind of a randy goat. I mean, in many ways, the same problem that Angelo's got is that neither of them can keep it in their trousers, except Touchstone doesn't seem to have any issue with that, and Angelo clearly does. But you know, they basically have the same problem. I looked into them a bit, but I was kind of more, I guess there comes a point where you're like, it's a clown, you kind of just, you know, whether I succeed or not at different points maybe, or with different audience, I don't know, but it was just that I need to try and make it funny, because sometimes these clowns can get they're quite verbose, the text is quite dense, and you're trying to work out a way to make it accessible, either physically or whatever, but in essence, what you're trying to hope is that the clown doesn't come on stage and the whole atmosphere just goes, oh no, here's the clown bit again, you know, which I've been to see shows like that before. So basically I just threw everything that I could at it to try and hope that I could at least if it's not working, go through it quickly.
This is a play that really does put the audience at the heart of the story. It includes them, it invites them in, it asks them to share the jokes, to give their opinion, which is sometimes somewhat unnerving.
Really getting to connect with them and having them feel like they're part of the show, as opposed to you're the audience and we're the actors and there's a line there. It can be scary to work with the audience, especially when things don't go to plan, but it's also exciting as well. I mean, I love it. I love the sort of buzz that they get out of it as well.
For me, I think a god requires a leap of the imagination. Imagination in theatre is a very powerful thing. We wanted to create something that was an ensemble moment of the company bringing an object to life.
I guess the first step in the design process was to do all the research, and we talked a lot about kind of community events, community theatre, because a lot of our work in the play is about alternative communities. Without too much searching, we found Mervyn Miller and asked him if he'd come and join us.
It's made out of steel, aluminium, wood, mesh, tissue paper, moss, and all leaves and all sorts of strange things.
Quite early on, we realised we needed carpentry skills, we needed prop making skills, we needed scenic painting skills, we needed people who could work with softs and materials, we needed people who could certainly work with metal work. What was wonderful is by some strange process, he became a big sort of community collaboration by everybody clubbing together and pulling together their experiences and their skills to help build something that we'd certainly never built on this scale.
Certainly every time I make a puppet, it's got something in it that's never been done before. So the process requires some testing. You've got to make something, you've got to then hold it and feel it and get a sense of how it moves. But it's not until you get it in the room and you can handle it that you can really feel how that joint's going to move and what kind of adjustment it will need. One of the reasons I love puppetry is because it brings all of the different technologies of the theatre into one space. It's got movement, it's got performance, it's got design, and all of those coalesce into this dynamic theatrical object.
I'm hoping audiences will feel that the enjoyment and, if you like, the playfulness of this character that appears at the end of the play, and enjoy that wonderful sort of suspending of disbelief that you can get with puppets. There is something rather wonderful when the audience buy into it and they want to believe it's come alive, and I think that's, for me, the essence of theatre.
Make the doors upon a woman's wit, and 'twill out at the casement. Shut that, 'twill out at the keyhole. Stop that, 'twill fly with the smoke, out at the chimney. Just before this moment, Rosalind and Orlando are in the midst of their love play, their testing of each other's love. It's a scene which has many, many different sections to it. I like to think of it as a scene where they almost have a 7-year relationship within it. It's a battle of ideas about what should a relationship be, what should love be. I think Rosalind is desperately in love with Orlando, but is fearful of what it means to commit herself long term to someone.
Rosalind has more lines than any woman in the whole of Shakespeare. And this is an example of one of those scenes where she talks a lot.
She does.
What are the different things that she might be trying to do to Orlando in this love lesson?
Well, I guess there is one version which is that she wants to test the strength of his love. But I guess when you go down that route, that can sometimes seem a little bit too hard on him, but that is definitely something to explore and to see how much of that she is doing within the scene. And I think at the same time, she herself is exploring what does a long-term relationship look like and what could that look like together.
Great, yeah. So I'd love to explore that first version to begin with, which is what if Rosalind is trying to make him lose the game. If this is a love game,
Yes.
what happens if she thinks he's going to lose it, or she wants him to lose the game?
Yes.
I'd love to see what happens if we try that, and I'm especially interested in what that does to both Orlando and Celia. Celia does not talk in this scene, but she is very much present in this scene. So I'd love to see what that does to both of the characters.
I think perhaps, the protection of this other character, this other Ganymede, allows her to ask him all the questions that she's ever wanted to ask him without fear of rejection, or she can push and test the boundaries in a way that perhaps she might not have been as comfortable as doing as Rosalind. I mean, who wouldn't, if you were dating someone, love to ask them all the questions and see them as they really are?
I think what he is really, really enjoying is spending time with Ganymede, and there's something really exciting about that game being played. He wants to do well. He wants to win this game that's set up. He wants to play and have fun with Ganymede. So there's a sort of back and forth that begins with them.
What I loved the second time was the spark between the two of you. And ultimately, I'm left watching it, wanting Orlando and Rosalind to get together and to be together, which feels really important for the audience in their relationship.
Yeah. But come, woo me,
Woohoo me! For now, I am in a holiday humour and like enough to consent. What would you say to me now? And I were your very, very Rosalind.
I would kiss before I spoke.
Nay! You were better speak first. And when you were gravelled for lack of matter, then you might take occasion to kiss.
How if the kiss be denied?
Then she puts you to entreaty, and there begins new matter.
Who could be out being before his beloved mistress?
Marry, that should you if I were your mistress. Or I should think my honesty ranker than my wit.
What, must I?
Woo! Not out of your apparel! And yet, out of your suit. Am not I your Rosalind?
It takes some joy to say you are, because I would be talking of her.
Wow! In her person, I say, woo, I will not have you.
Then in mine own person, I die.
No! The poor world is almost 6,000 years old, and in all that time there was not any man died in a love cause. Troilus had his brains dashed out with a Grecian club, and he is one of the very patterns of love. I mean, Leander, he would have lived many a fair year, had it not been for a hot midsummer night, for, good youth, he went but forth to wash him in the Hellespont, and being taken with the cramp, was drowned. And men have died from time to time, and worms have eaten them, but not for love.
I would not have my right Rosalind of this mind, for I protest her frown might kill me.
By this hand, it will not kill a fly. But come, now I will be your Rosalind in a more coming-on disposition. Ask me what you will. I will grant it.
Then love me, Rosalind.
Yes, faith will I. Fridays and Saturdays and all.
And wilt thou have me?
I and 20 such.
What sayest thou?
Are you not good?
I hope so.
Why then can one desire too much of a good thing? Come, sister, you shall be the priest and marry us. Give me your hand, Orlando. What do you say, sister?
Pray thee, marry us.
I cannot say the words.
Tremendous.
Oh, it was amazing. I thought it was great. I thought it was visually absolutely stunning.
I'd say it's got a bit of everything. So it's a bit of romance, a bit of rivalry.
I really particularly like the strong female lead.
I love the characters. It's for everyone. I think it's for everyone.
Just a good evening
out.
Good evening
really.
out.
Yeah.
Costumes, the set, it was wonderful.
First of all, the acting was brilliant, and I came all the way from the United States to see something like this.
As a newcomer, I was just blown away by it all. It's really good.
Very vibrant and lively and funny.
Good night out, great fun.
It's incredible, incredible. They've got to come and see it to experience it.
Plunge in, immerse yourself, get the ticket.
It's a really fun play, and you should go check it out.
Out of 10, 10.